Thank you again, and welcome again. And again, my name is Amy Gottlieb. My title, I'm the Director of Migration for U.S. Programs for the American Friends Service Committee, and I'm really happy to be with you here today and to give some updates. I think a lot of you know what's happening in our... Oops, sorry. Were you not hearing me?
Now you're speaking, Amy.
Oh, was I not speaking? I was going on and
Oh,
on.
oh, I
No,
can
you're
hear you.
Apologies.
good.
Okay. Did you hear me say welcome and my name and all that? You did.
Yes.
Okay, good. That was crazy. All right. Welcome again. So we have a packed agenda for you today, but we do like to hear from you in the chat. So, and I see some folks are putting in some of the things that you're doing to support your neighbors, your communities, your friends. And yeah, we're going to share some ideas for you as we go through today. And we're going to talk about how AFSC is responding. We've got amazing staff with us today. We've got two of our colleagues from DC. We've got two from New Jersey. We've got one from Colorado. And we're going to go through some information for you. And at the end, we're going to try to give you a little time to check in and hear from you and have some questions. Um, I just want to kick us off. We're going to be hearing first from our colleagues in Washington. We have Brett Hines, who I'm going to just read his title. Brett is the Global Policy Coordinator for Economic and Climate Justice and is, as I said, based in DC and is going to talk a little bit about the shutdown, and then we're going to lead into a couple other colleagues. So the whole program is going to be, we're going to hear from our DC staff. I'm going to do a little bit of a framing of AFSC's response to the really violent and aggressive attacks on immigrants in the United States. And then we're going to turn it over to our team of our Just Migration, a couple of our Just Migration staff. So with that, I'm going to keep reading your wonderful answers, and we're going to come back to those later in the program. But Summer, I think we can go ahead to the next slide, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce Brett. Thank you, Brett, so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me once again. I always love these calls. And we are now entering day 21 of the government shutdown, which I'm sure everyone here has heard a little bit about. Government shutdown occurs when Congress is unable to pass its budget bills on time. It's not a particularly frequent event, but in recent years it has become a lot more frequent. And we are currently on a path now to perhaps have the longest one ever. The last longest one was about 35 days, and we're entering day 21 without any clear end in sight. What this means practically is that a lot of government services are frozen, with a couple of major exceptions, such as Social Security benefits and the military. And more than 600,000 government workers have been furloughed so far. That number is likely going to rise, and the number of government services that will become unavailable is going to increase the longer the shutdown continues, as a number of government agencies slowly run out of contingency funds and extra rainy day funds that they have for situations like this. At the moment, there's no clear end to the sight in Congress among negotiations at the leadership level. The White House is trying to pressure congressional Democrats by aiming for a lot of programs that they are perceived to like the most and trying to concentrate furloughs and layoffs in those programs. But until we see more progress, the outcome for when this shutdown will actually end seems very unclear at this point. Next slide, please. So, at stake in this showdown, and one of the big reasons for this government shutdown is a major healthcare policy debate that's been unfolding kind of around the shutdown as its context. There's a premium tax credit, is what it's called, created by the Affordable Care Act that was extended in 2021 as a COVID-19 response. And essentially, this is a tax credit that helps 3.8 million people get access to health insurance every year, and it significantly lowers premiums by 50% or more for 24 million other people. That extended tax cut is set to expire at the end of this year, and it will cause a lot of people, particularly those who are using the Affordable Care Act marketplace for their health insurance, to see sudden incredibly large spikes in their healthcare premiums. And this is kind of the policy that is at the center of the shutdown. The Democratic approach so far, their proposal has been to extend this tax credit immediately as part of a bill to reopen the government, thus both reopening the government and protecting healthcare. While the Republican proposal generally has been to reopen the government now and then address this policy later, if at all, when combined with a package of other healthcare reforms that they would like to see put into effect. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the end is still somewhat murky right now. We're not sure where this is going, but as we move into November, the stakes are going to start growing higher, and I think that that's all the more reason for us to communicate with our members of Congress and let them know that we would like to see the government reopened and we would like to see people's health care protected, millions and millions of people's health care protected. So if you want to contact your member of Congress with this information, you could find a form to contact them pretty easily at afsc.org/take-action. It's afsc.org/take-action. And here to talk with you a little bit more about some of the stuff that we've been watching here in DC is my colleague, Mike. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. I am Mike Merriman Lotz. I'm the Just Peace Global Policy Director for the American Friends Service Committee, calling to you from my home in Philadelphia, although I'm back and forth to DC quite frequently. I'm going to mention two things more related to foreign policy. One, the ceasefire in Gaza and what we're seeing there, and second, some of the actions related to the US strikes and killing in the Caribbean. On Gaza, we've just entered into a second week of the tentative ceasefire that went into effect earlier this month. At AFSC, that's something that we've been calling and working for consistently over the last 2 years. The fact that much of the violence has ended is something that we are celebrating, and we are talking with our staff there as they now switch over and continue to provide humanitarian relief, even as they themselves mourn those they've lost and attempt to recover. But also, we are not backing down in our pushes for action, and just wanting to say that this ceasefire is quite tentative. Within the first 24 hours, there were at least 7 Palestinians who were killed, and over the last 10 days, there have been more than 100 Palestinians and 2 Israelis who've been killed in Gaza. Violence is endemic, and many of the promises that were laid out in the ceasefire haven't been fulfilled. So those of us working in the humanitarian community continue to be blocked from importing goods. The UN is bringing more in, but there's nowhere near enough going into Gaza to meet the incredible needs that have arisen over the last 2 years, nor to offset the starvation that much of the population was facing. And so even as we say that there needs to be pressure from the US government to continue to enforce the ceasefire, there also needs to be continued pressure on the Israeli government to allow full humanitarian access, to ensure that violence is ended, to move towards a full withdrawal. Right now, they've withdrawn from approximately 50% of Gaza, and there's no signs that that's going to increase. And there also needs to continue to be pressure in Congress to support an end to the sending of weapons to Israel, not only until this ceasefire is maintained, but until there's longer term change and move towards a permanent solution that brings peace for both Israelis and Palestinians. And so as part of that, we continue to push for the Block the Bombs bill, seeing that as an important step towards accountability and pressure to maintain peace in Israel and Palestine. The second thing that I'd like to briefly mention is just that the U.S. over the last month or so has stepped up military actions in the Caribbean and against what we've labeled as narco-terrorists in Latin America. So far, the U.S. has bombed at least 7 boats, killing 32 people. This has all been done without any kind of due process or any kind of confirmation of who is actually on board those boats. So one of the boats that was struck earlier this week, it's been said that the person on board was a man named Alejandro Carranza, who was a Colombian fisherman. and there is an indications that civilians are being killed. But even outside of that, if these are people who are connected with gangs or drug smuggling, these would still count as extrajudicial executions, effectively murder by the United States, where we have decided that people are guilty without any kind of proof, trial, or due process, and are executing them on the high seas. All of this is putting us in a condition in conflict with an increasing number of countries in Latin America, not only Venezuela, but now Colombia and several other locations. Equally concerning, last week, the Trump administration said that they were authorizing the special forces operations inside of Venezuela, and there's an increasing push for ground war or military actions inside Venezuela. It's important to say that we're not in a situation of war, but we're being pushed towards one. And in order to prevent that from happening, there is bipartisan movement in both the House and the Senate through the use of war powers resolutions to stop the steady march towards war. We have both an explainer that offers some more information about what's happening in the Caribbean, what the US actions are, and what some of the legal implications are, as well as an action that people can take to contact Congress to tell them to stop the US from continuing to kill people and from moving us closer to war. Those will be dropped into the chat, and we hope that you'll join us in action, and I'll hand it back over to my colleagues.
Thank you so much, Brett and Mike. And thanks to those of you who jumped on video. I appreciate seeing faces. Never really know who's out there when you're just looking at boxes with names. So thank you. And the links are already in the chat. So thanks to all the colleagues behind the scenes and in front of the scenes who make these Third Tuesdays happen. I just want to, before we head into our kind of heavy topics, just to say that it's a joy to work at the American Friends Service Committee, where I've been here for 30 years almost, and have the privilege of working with some of the most brilliant organizers, thinkers, activists, lawyers. And that keeps me going every day, and coming together with this amazing group of people who pulls together these webinars is also just an honor. And, we also love your feedback. So, we really are open to hearing from you, and we're going to keep them going. We made that decision. So Third Tuesdays is a thing. It's real. And our theme, as always, is protect, resist, and build. And as we're thinking about the hard topics that we're talking about, we really try to hold on as much as we possibly can to all the different ways that people are resisting all the bad things that are happening. And so much of what you all put in the chat is a piece of that, right? It's, the things you're doing in your community, the sharing food, the offering a ride, the putting up a sign. I was at a conference at Madera Community College last week with some colleagues who are here today. And driving into that community college, there are these small signs placed along the road, into the driveway, that just say, "You matter." And honestly, that was such a beautiful statement, to drive into this space and to see signs around, celebrating the diversity in the community there. Those are things that keep us going and that we're really trying to celebrate. That said, you all know we're not in great times right now. Things are really difficult every day. And we are doing what we can to highlight the positive, and to also recognize and understand the bad things, and where we have opportunities to intervene and to change and to stop and to mitigate the harms. We are going, I just want to start out, some of you might have been on the very first Third Tuesday call that we did back in January, third Tuesday of January, right after, it was the day after the inauguration. It was a rough day for many of us, although it's gotten a lot rougher. I shared a story in that very first call about my husband, who had been facing deportation for almost 20 years at that point. And the day before the inauguration, he received a presidential pardon from President Biden on Biden's last day in office, and that protected him from deportation, right? That ended his deportation struggle, but he still had, paperwork and things needed to happen. And I wanted to take this moment of having the mic tonight to share with you all that Ravi got his green card this week and just kind of arrived in the mail. And it feels like we've sort of come full circle in this moment of an over 20-year struggle that involved a lot of detention, a lot of really, really, really hard work, a lot of community support. And the only reason he got that green card and the only reason he got that pardon was because of the community support and the organizing and the brilliant thinking, and all of the pieces came together. And I wanted to share that with you as just a bit of uplifting news in the midst of a lot of really difficult stories. So we're going to be hearing today from 3 of our extraordinary staff in the Just Migration team. AFSC in the US has 7 programs that focus on just migration work, although now everybody, all of our staff, everybody in the world really is paying attention to what's happening in immigrant communities and with immigrants and with federal agents tearing communities apart. And so we really try to make as much information available as possible. So we're going to hear from our co-directors of our New Jersey Immigrant Rights Program, our legal director, Alex Goncalves Peña, and our organizing and advocacy director, Araceli Argueta, are going to be sharing with you. And then we're going to hear from Jennifer Piper from our Colorado office as program director from our Colorado Immigrant Rights Program. And what we're going to hear about is both many of the things. You've heard a lot about immigration detention. You've heard a lot about immigration, about deportations. You've heard a lot about immigration court arrests. I meant to say too, if you have particular questions that you'd like us to answer, feel free to put your questions in the chat on these, around immigration detention, deportation. We'd be happy to try to answer them if we have time. So, you've heard about arrests, you've heard about street arrests, you've heard about the National Guard being deployed to cities, you've heard about ICE officers wearing masks, you've heard about court cases that are good and court cases that are bad, and it's just basically chaos and turmoil and hardship, and people are afraid. They're afraid of family separation, they're afraid of being torn away from their communities, and they are afraid of really being sent to a place where they may not have any family or contacts, or maybe where they've never been before, like people being sent to El Salvador who are not from El Salvador, they're from Venezuela. Or I was recently in Costa Rica meeting with Russian and Azerbaijani and Armenian asylum seekers who had come to the US and were sent to Costa Rica. So we're sending people out, we're doing a lot of really, really hard things. And we also are taking one foot in front of the other, putting one foot in front of the other to be sure that we are staying calm and centered and able to respond in the way that we know how at AFSC, which is through movements, through our Quaker circles, through some direct service, through mutual support and aid, through advocacy, through all the pieces, bringing it together and making it cohesive. So that's just a little bit of sort of stage setting. And we're going to hear more of the details from our local staff. But as I said, you can use the Q&A function. Thank you for that reminder, Mary. I'm going to turn it over to Alexandra Goncalves Peña, our wonderful colleague, Legal Services Director in our New Jersey office. And thank you, Alex.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Someone say a yes, a thumbs up. Okay, fantastic. Hi, everyone. Alex Goncalves Peña here with you all. First of all, there's 92 people here, and I want to thank every single one of you for being here, for your interest in this topic. Hopefully, what I'm going to say is of interest to you and something that you can further share with your communities, because the information is only, so good unless it, keeps being spread. I do want to acknowledge, and just to go back to something that Amy said, that we are dealing with very challenging. We're in very challenging times, dealing with very challenging issues all the time by design. It's overwhelming. What I'm going to speak to you about is kind of going to add to that. But, and I forget the exact quote, but it's something that, so I'm going to ruin it here, but out of challenges come opportunities. And I have to say that in the midst of all of this, the way the community, both national and international, have come together to work on migrant issues is something that I have never seen in my 20 years of doing this work as a legal service provider. And seeing that gives me such immense hope. So that being said, I am here to provide you with some information on what is happening on the ground, what we as legal service providers, what my team specifically is seeing with regards to representing individuals that are in removal proceedings. I'm going to speak to you about some policy changes and how they're affecting our ability to get clients out of detention, as well as limitations to an individual's ability to seek asylum, and also the questions, the growing issues and concerns with our immigration courts specifically, and how they are essentially becoming an enforcement arm of the federal government. So the greatest change that we have seen is an increase in detention of individuals and our ability to secure release for our clients. So this has happened through policy changes that have come down from the DHS, but also given the force of law by recent Board of Immigration Appeals precedential decisions, right? The Board of Immigration Appeals is, from the sound of it, the appellate body of the immigration courts, and they can issue precedential decisions that all other immigration courts have to follow, right? So first came these terrible policies saying, for example, certain people, such as certain people that enter the United States through the border, are subject to what's called mandatory detention, okay? And they're applying this extremely broadly, which is leading to an increase in individuals that are detained. Couple that with Lake and Riley, as well as the recent Board of Immigration Appeals case that I just referenced, which says, yes, you can continue to detain certain individuals which previously were eligible for bond. And bond is a form of, it's like the bail in the criminal legal system, or requesting parole. It's another way that we can ask for release of our clients, which previously we were able to do more often than not. Yes, there were challenges, and yes, there were denials of our applications for relief, but we're seeing that become even more difficult, if not impossible. A little bit about numbers. Currently, there are over 59,000 individuals in immigration detention right now. This includes adults, kids, families, everyone. And it is a direct result of these policies. So many of the arrests, and Amy mentioned this, are happening in our immigration courts. Since there was a policy memo that came out in April, basically, encouraging the application of what's called expedited removal to certain individuals in the United States. So basically saying that certain people are not eligible to see a judge, that basically through the Immigration and Nationalities Act, an individual can be removed without due process, without an ability to see a judge. So as a result of that, what is happening is we're seeing these increased apprehensions in the immigration courts. At last I saw, there have been over 2,000 arrests in immigration courts throughout the United States. New York City has been kind of the focal point. And, we're just seeing family members, seeing individuals go in for master hearings, being arrested at master calendar hearings or after these hearings. And, you know, unfortunately, we're also seeing many judges allow these arrests to happen in their courts. So when I was talking about expedited removal just a moment ago, and I know I'm sorry if I'm saying a lot of things that, you know, it's kind of like the nomenclature that we use. So my apologies. I'm going to try to explain that. So basically, what the Department of Homeland Security, which are the prosecutors in the court setting, have been requesting judges do is to terminate a case so that they can then, under existing laws, say that this person is subject to expedited removal. You do not have a right to a judge and you are subject to mandatory detention. And many judges have been complicit and have said, okay, and ICE is chomping at the bit at the ready outside. Now, with these additional changes, right, with this recent case judicial decision from the Board of Immigration Appeals and these other policy memos, they've expanded that. So even if a judge, a good judge, is trying to do their best, that's saying, no, give me, you know, you have to brief this, I want to hear arguments as to why we should. Because of these other policies, what's happening is that once the individual goes outside in the hallway, they are then apprehended by ICE, because they are saying that now they are subject to what's called mandatory detention. And this has made our work extremely difficult and challenging. We have, you know, been trying all that we can to secure release. But unfortunately, this has, because we have very limited recourse in immigration courts, and the Board of Immigration Appeals has been reduced from 25 to about 8, you know, individuals that side with the administration. It makes it impossible. So what we're forced to do is go into federal court and try to secure release through habeas corpus petitions. So it's really in those federal courts, not the Supreme, the federal courts, where we're going to be able to help our clients. Now, unfortunately, the result is that many, many people do not want to fight their cases anymore, right? This is by design. They arrest, they detain. They send them to detention centers in legal deserts where they're away from family, community, ability to access counsel, make it very difficult for us to communicate with them. And they say, you know what? I want to give up. I have a colorable claim. Many of our clients have colorable claims, and they say, I want to go back. This happened recently with a client of mine who I've been representing for 6 years, and decided to go back to home country and to give up her case and go into hiding there, figure out a way to get out, then stay in the United States and have her car window broken by an immigration officer. So these are all very, very real consequences that you know, are resulting from all of these apprehensions and these detentions. You know, for those that do want to fight their case, okay, many of our clients are asylum seekers, right? So they're seeking refuge in the United States because they have suffered past harm or persecution, or they have a fear, right, that something will happen to them. So they're making these, you know, they're narrowing the ability of individuals to access asylum, which makes those cases even more difficult, okay? Now, I do want to note that these kind of limitations were happening during the Biden administration, okay? They teed it up, Trump took off. And when I'm also referencing a lot of these laws, such as expedited removal, guess what? Those were already in the books. It's kind of like they're using, because they are, existing laws, existing regulations to do this. So unfortunately, it was kind of set up for them to do and you know, impose all of this violence on our community members. So what ways are they restricting an individual's ability to access asylum? So two two ways that we're saying, and we're trying to deal with, coming up with good arguments to counter these. And, it requires so much more work and time. It's well worth it, of course. But one is called pretermission. And this comes from a policy memo issued by the head of the immigration courts, okay, the Executive Office for Immigration Review, which, by the way, sits under the Department of Justice. So there you go. You see the connections there, right? So they're getting these, orders to say you can pretermit or summarily deny an asylum case before even hearing it. So if I'm a judge, I get a case. You're saying I can look at it just on the papers and make the decision without hearing testimony from my client, without hearing testimony from witnesses, without reviewing the documents. So it is extremely problematic. There is absolutely no due process in this at all. And it has led to a very high increase in cases being pretermitted. So this is further erosion of due process for individuals that are seeking refuge and protection in the United States. Okay, I think my time is done. Because I told you I was chatty. I think my time is done. Yes? Are we nodding? Are we
Yeah.
nodding?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
if you want to wrap up, Alex, that's great.
I mean, want to leave us off with, there's all of these things are impacting, due process. The immigration courts are essentially have become an arm of the Trump administration, an enforcement arm of the Trump administration. There's absolutely no neutral arbitration happening in that space. However, we continue to do our work. We do it hard, and we will continue to fight because we will win. This won't be won in the courts, though. It will be won in community. So with that, I am going to pass it along to my colleague, Araceli Argueta, our advocacy and organizing.
Thank you, Alex. And thank you, everyone. I was reading all the comments on what you have been doing to support your neighbor. It is amazing. So thank you so much. And all the violence that we are seeing on the streets, and also the one that we are not seeing that Alex was talking to us about, like the systemic challenge, like the symbolic violence, the structural violence, have been legitimized and justified with hate narratives that shape how our societies understand and legitimize harm. So in order to reduce those narratives, we have been working on a project that works on bringing the voices of those who are facing detention and deportation, who are facing the systemic issues of the immigration system. So we did a project that is called Traces, which is about immigrants reclaiming their agency with their story and telling part of their story to make changes in society. So what we are going to see right now is a short video of Fedner, part of his story and part of what he faced while he was on detention. So let's go with the video and then I'll continue.
Me? I chose this image because unfortunately this became like a part of my life. I can't escape it. I can't act like it's not there. Like I can't pretend that it don't happen. You know what I'm saying? Vicious. Vicious. I've been there 14 months. I might have seen 2 people win in 14 months. And it's like a vicious cycle. It's like very vicious because I'm watching people from Honduras or El Salvador or anywhere have 5 kids in America, working everything, and they getting deported over the littlest things. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's like it's a real unfair system with them. Like it's very unfair, even with me.
As you heard from Fedner, the system is unfair, the system is dehumanizing, and the system is vicious. And it doesn't only affect the people who is facing it directly, as he did. He was lucky that he was supported by the attorneys at AFC and the social workers, and he was able to get out, but and also got support from the social workers to continue with the path. But that's not the fate of many of the individuals who are facing detention right now. And as I was saying, it doesn't only affect him or them, it affects their families, their community, and society. So, what I would like to talk about a little bit is some of the effects, the most important effects of detention in society first, and then how it affects specifically families and their kids. So, in the first part, I wanted to talk about employment because it will affect both immigrant communities and citizens as they will face job losses. So we have seen a lot of bonded warehouses and people being detained while they are going to work. And according to the Economic Policy Institute, if this administration follows through with their plan of 4 years of deporting 4 million people over that time, 3.3 million of immigrant will be unemployed or remove fewer employees. There will be also 2.6 fewer employed US born. So immigrant workers make up a substantial part of the workforce in the US. If deportation sharply reduce the supply of labor, threatening the ability for employers to pay for their expenses like rent, machinery, and even the labor of other remaining workers. We have seen this already happening in a lot of local business when they are reducing their revenue, so not being able to maintaining their companies, meaning also the reduction of the job for everybody in the communities. And at the end of the period, deportation will worsen the labor shortage in key industries. The deportations will also eliminate 500,000 childcare jobs. Immigrants made 43% of home healthcare aides. So, what will happen when people can no longer find home care for their elders or for their relatives? And the most important part is with the families, what is happening with the kids now. And I will like to go to a couple of short parts of some stories that we have been working with. The first one is now working with a partner organization because it's a 16-year-old girl whose parents went into detention and are about to be deported. And instead of looking for a university, finding or deciding what to do with her education, thinking about her grades, she's working on getting emancipated so she can continue state and do something, or taking care of her siblings, the youngest one. We have another kid who have been calling concerned, trying to get help to find her parents as they left for work, but they never came back. Or kids who were unable to enroll in schools because both parents were detained and they didn't have documents for other relatives who enrolled them in school. So these are everyday cases. And there is approximately 4.4 million US born children who live in mixed status families, and deporting the individuals, mainly the first providers of this house, it doesn't only affect the family itself, but it also creates about 63% of lost income for those families. And then it comes with the mental health, like in addition to the economical and social costs, mass deportation policies are heightening the fear in the community, the uncertainty on immigrant families. A lot of families are avoiding using governmental programs, are avoiding to use healthcare services because of the fear. And then it comes family separation due to deportation. There are a lot of negative psychological effects in the families, especially in the children, with emotional, behavioral challenges, anxiety, fear, sadness, anger, withdrawal, and a lot of distrust from institutions, but also from public spaces. what it creates is that kids and communities no longer have the capacity to engage in activities with churches, with schools, with community organization. That is actually what gives lives to society. So the challenges families are facing is interminable. Alex was talking about people being transferred all over. And that also creates a challenge for families trying to figure out where the relatives are to keep the connection. If it is hard for the attorneys to figure out how to continue to communicate with their relatives, for families figuring out how each detention center manage communication, how costly it is for each family, it becomes a homework that it's too hard to continue if they want to continue also making life for their families. We have seen long lines of relatives um, waiting in line outside of the detention facilities trying to see their relatives. They are supposed to have 1 hour with their loved ones, and they get up to 15 minutes, if nothing, if not nothing in some cases. So it becomes a prison outside the prison. So what is happening is putting us all at risk. Abducting people from the street is not normal, and we shouldn't allow people to try us, make us think that it's normal. That's it.
Thank you so much, Araceli and Alex. That is a lot, a lot. I just before I turn it over to Piper, Jennifer Piper, I just want to say that FSC, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've been around for 110 years almost. And a lot of those years we've worked with immigrants, migrants, refugees, people who are displaced, asylum seekers. We've worked with people in prison. We've worked with people in immigration detention. We believe that prison should be abolished. We believe that immigration detention facilities should be abolished. And in all the work that we do to provide support, services, and whatever else people need to people who are in detention, to people who are dealing with deportation, to people whose families are being torn apart, we continue to say that this system must end. These systems that are locking people up, that are tearing people away, that they must end. And we are committed to partnering with all of our allies and internally with our other thematic work and our Just Peace work and our Just Economies work to say that we do not believe that people are being treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve. And we are going to continue moving in that direction for as long as it takes. Another 100 years if it has to be, I would hope not, but we will keep at it. We will keep chipping away and finding those moments because we know that somewhere at the end of this path is a place that we visualize, that we're building towards, and we're going to get there with your participation and your help. So I just wanted to say that. I also wanted to say that I didn't say this earlier, but our staff are some of the most committed, brilliant people I've ever known. And many of our staff, most of our staff, in fact, are people who are directly impacted by these policies, by these attacks. And so the fact that people are here in the evenings, taking time from their families, shows a level of idealism, I think, like in a good way, right? That we have to be idealistic in this hard time. We have to get ourselves to a place where we're going to keep that believing. And our staff are here and our staff are in that fight, both personally and professionally. And so we do invite you to join us in whatever way you can. But I wanted to acknowledge, how hard this work is, right? Like and I am in a very privileged position. Like I am not on the front lines anymore. But the teams that you're hearing from, Alex, Araceli, Jennifer Piper, like these are folks on the ground, on the front lines every day. And so I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Piper and just hear a bit about how Colorado and the amazing work that they do there is helping to protect and resist and build towards a better world.
Thank you, Amy. Can everybody hear me well? Great. So my name is Jen or Piper, either one. And I use she, her pronouns, and I work here in the Colorado office of the American Friends Service Committee. We organize both allies and immigrants in our office. And I was asked to talk a little bit about what does accompaniment really look like in this moment. And I think one of the most important things that I want to highlight is the the systems that many of us were used to, and you could hear this both in Alex's share and Araceli's, the levers that used to work for, in some cases, or to pass some laws at the federal level, don't exist anymore. And that this is a system, the immigration system is constantly changing. The rules are every day different than the rules the day before. And I think one small example, I have a member who has a commercial driver's license. Commercial driver's license. He drives a school bus for Denver Public Schools. He has a work permit, but the kind of work permit he has is through the asylum proceedings, and the federal government just passed a rule saying that those folks can no longer renew or get those CDLs reissued. And he found that out when he went to the DMV to try and have his address removed because he was a victim of crime, and he got permission to do that. And luckily, he was able to keep that license, but that change happened 3 weeks ago, and we're just finding out about it because there's just so much change all the time. I don't mention this to like overwhelm us. I mention it to ground us, because knowing the system better is not going to save us, and it doesn't actually help those of us who are not lawyers in accompanying people. Like if we have not studied immigration law, even if we have, people like many lawyers don't even know all of the changes that have happened at once. But particularly for those of us who are not lawyers like me, at this moment in all of the 20 some years I've been doing this, more than 20 years as a volunteer and then paid staff, it does not help us to better know the rules. The people who are actually experiencing all of these changes and knowing them best more than ever are immigrants in our communities who are impacted. And I think that one of the most important components of accompanying people in this moment in any way is humility, and really deep listening, because because you can't be an expert on this system anymore, and to be very rooted in why we're showing up and the world we want to see, which is really hard, messy work. It's the work of unlearning a lot of our patterns of being experts, of being decision makers, of saving folks, and leaning into really deep, lasting relationships with humility, and being creative. Part of the opportunity that I think Alex led off with that quote, like part of the opportunity of the system being systematically unfair and illegitimate at this point, is that it invites us to be creative, to do things that we've never done before, from buying up in an area where there's a lot of state repression, buying up all of the ice cream from paleteros, like the people who push the trucks, to offering keys to your house to people you know who are afraid and saying, you don't have to call me, just come. If you see stuff, if you don't feel safe in your neighborhood, come over, right? To creating art displays. But I think I wanted to just share a couple of quick pieces that I think are really grounding for me. And I look back to really frequently, really often. If I can find the window I want to share. Hold on one sec. Okay, don't I'm just going to share my screen because I can't find the window. Don't judge all my tabs that are open. Okay, so these sound really simple and very easy, but I just want to go through them and talk a little bit about some different ways that these show up. So this is really accompanying people for that social change that we want to see in the world, right? So one is really leaning into relationships of trust and accountability by showing up and staying in the relationship for the long haul. So I think one of the most important things to understand is even if this administration or this Congress changes tomorrow, most of these systemic pieces are not easily redone, rebuilt. Like these problems, the reason this administration can do so much harm is because we had all these rules before already. Like 90% of what they're doing is legal. It's not just, there's a difference between injustice and what's legal. So really staying in it for the long haul and listening carefully. Even when another issue becomes or another idea becomes, more exciting, it's really important to stay with it, even when it feels impossible. And I think a lot of the folks that I see leaning in over the years initially have that hope, and when things don't immediately change, kind of get disappointed. And I think the biggest change that happens for me, the most transformative changes, is staying in it. So getting involved with a rapid response network and answering those texts, even when it's inconvenient, right? Even when it seems like one more rumor, like continuing to show up, even when you're not totally sure that is something that's moving the needle, that presence is noticed. The other one I wanted to touch on is that we're all learning together. So I think a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing around is kind of presented like folks who aren't immigrants can just like show up and decide what's best or just do something. But I think a lot of the time we're all connected and we're all learning together. So the immigrant community and also the ally community, more than ever before, we have to be asking each other, like, what are you learning? Why do you think they're doing it this way? What do you think they're going to do next? And really leaning into the knowledge that's in community. And then the last piece I wanted to talk about is just this one. Like acknowledging and unlearning our patterns of dominance, like taking charge or leading or making decisions or saving. Because I think we're all taught that a lot of us are taught that we need to have the answers, that we only have value if we're like fixing something. But a lot of what happens is we add like anxiety and panic and stress to the situations we're showing up to, instead of bringing peace and presence and openness and calm. And I just think of all the times when I've had something really hard happening in my life. I don't want someone to come in who's like, this is so hard. What are we going to do? We got to do it right now. Like, I really want that presence. And I think I looked up the definition of presence right before this call, and it really is being visible and constant. And those two things give people a foundation from which they can feel resourced and can better make their own decisions. And I think that's true for all of us. And then getting out of our comfort zone. So what might be asked for is to like watch a field office to see what the patterns are of how many agents are coming in and out, or what might be most needed is showing up and handing out flyers when you don't speak the same language. And I think trying those things, they don't have to be your constant contribution, because we all want to give what we're best at, but trying the thing that's outside of our comfort zone also places us in the shoes of the people we're accompanying, who are very much outside of their comfort zone every single day in many areas of their life, right? So I think it's a way that humility allows us to learn and to place ourselves more in the shoes of the folks next to us. And I think a few of the different ways that that we've really been engaged here in Colorado is we have a court watch, like several folks have mentioned before. We haven't seen them hit the courts very hard here, but really doing know your rights at that and maintaining our access to the building for now. We have an ICE watch. We have a rapid response network. But I think the things that are going to help us the most as militarization continues to increase are hyper-local connections. Learning, like if you don't already live in an immigrant majority neighborhood, learning where the businesses and places that people work and shop are, and like building a relationship maybe with a business owner or a local school, and really asking like, I want to be able to show up and observe and provide more safety to folks. How would I best do that? Really creating local networks of connection that, I think Barrio Watch is one model, but there are many models that look in many different ways based on local culture to show up and have that rapid response start from the moment someone sees something out of place in their neighborhood, and then having their neighbors or their fellow teachers or their fellow employees respond. And really opening doors for folks. We did a bunch of Know Your Rights in dairy farms, and ICE wasn't able to get access to those farms a couple months ago. We didn't expect the dairy farms to say yes to us, but we asked them anyway, right? And I think that's what this moment requires us to really like stop, like to not think about traditional, like who's on our side and who's not, but to reapproach people and say, how do you feel about this now? And like, how can we keep each other safe in our local communities? So yeah, I'll stop there. But I think there are so many things that each of us can do. It just requires us stepping out of our comfort zone and trying to break down barriers.
Thank you so much for that, Piper. That was really extraordinary. And I think the timing of this, coming after the weekend of the No Kings protests, where I'm sure many of us were out there, having ideas and kind of thinking through what's next feels extremely important to me. That we can't, a lot of people are talking about, the protest is great, it's visible, it's a lot of people out there, it's energizing, it feels good to be in community with people, but those protests are not going to change the systems, right? And so what are the things that we're going to be able to do day to day in our communities that are really making a difference? So thank you. Piper, I think you're going to take us through a kind of quick like grounding piece. Is that right? We'll do that really briefly, and then we're going to just open it up for Q&A, and then we'll do a quick closing.
Yeah. I just want to invite folks either sitting or if you're able to just to stand either way, just put your feet flat on the floor as you're able, your back against the back of your chair if it has one, or if you're standing, you put your arms, on your waist, and to just take like a deep breath in for a count of 4, kind of fast. So like 2, 3, 4, and then hold it for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then let it out for a count of 8. And when you let your breath out, like really push it slowly, like, and do that. Let's do that like 3 times together. So let's breathe in. And on this last breath out, maybe just like shake it or swipe it off of you. And then, yeah, really can do the bottoms of your feet too. And then just take like 5 seconds to close your eyes and feel your gut and your heart for a second. And recognize any anxiety or tension. Look for points of connection or strength. And then let's just come back and ask like some questions and see if we collectively have some answers together.
Thank you so much for that, Piper. We decided to do that before the Q&A just to kind of give us some space to process everything that we heard. And I really want to thank all of my incredible colleagues, Brett, Mike, Alex, Araceli, and Piper for everything you just shared. Yeah, there's one question in the chat that I think we could, sorry, the Q&A, that we can start with. And apologies for the volume. I hope that you're all able to hear okay. But there's a question here that I'm going to maybe ask Alex and Araceli to start with, and I could also touch it a little bit, but is there any movement regarding the inhumane treatment of immigrants once they're detained in ICE facilities? Broken toilets, rotten food, cramped facilities, 24-hour lights. Is there no legal path to shut a prison down? If this is the case, I would consider this torture. Has there been any success in the past in cases involving other prisons? Alex or Araceli, do you want to
I can
start with that
probably
one?
start.
Great.
And
Thank you.
so first for the movement on the detention, at least in the
Sorry to interrupt. Can you come back on video?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Sorry to interrupt.
So on the detention side for the at least for the Northeast, there is a network of several organizations that are working right now on not necessarily improving the condition, but improving the condition while we get to shoot down all the detention facilities. So we are working with different detention centers, including Moshannon, Delaney Hall, EDC, and especially targeting the big companies that are profiting from the detention center across the country, which is CoreCivic and Geo Group. And there was in the past the possibility, there was a bill in New Jersey that allowed the shoot down of 4 detention facilities. However, that went challenged and it went into court. And right now the court, like it went to the Third Circuit and we lost. So that protection that we had in New Jersey is no longer available. So right now, considering the conditions, we are in defense mode and in creating alternative and structures to protect the community. For afterwards, starting to promote more bills that will stop detention facility, but we will continue to work on shutting down the detention centers. And on the legal side, I don't know if you have anything to add, Alex.
Sure. Just to acknowledge that, there were existing protocols for these facilities. So, it basically was, guidance, right, to jailers on treatment of detainees. It was far from perfect, but there was a lot of community push in order to make them better. Okay. And we did have, the Department of Homeland Security did have an Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, which we could, basically send complaints to, right? So we could file a complaint on behalf of an individual, a group of individuals do a mega complaint, and those actually had success sometimes. And it was really great to see. That office has been eliminated. The protocols, I don't even know if they exist publicly anymore. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that they are going to continue to, violate human rights, that people are going to continue to die in these facilities because they're not prepared to hold people. They're not healthcare providers, right? People don't have access to medication. These facilities aren't even being built correctly. They're popping up tent cities. We saw this in Delaney Hall recently when some individuals, because the facility itself was just so like structurally like not sound, but could push a wall down. This is just, they don't know what they're doing. They do know what they're doing, but there's also a good amount of stupidity here. And so my point is that as a result of that stupidity, people are going to continue to get hurt. And we have to be loud. We have to listen to them. Piper is talking about those connections, like go provide accompaniment, provide support, go to the facilities, listen to what the people are saying and blast it out. Going again to my point, this is only going to end with community pushback, like truly. So those are my 2 cents.
Thanks, Alex. Go ahead, Piper. Looks like you wanted to jump in also.
Yeah, I think, there are some movements of looking at suing, but I think it's much more urgent than that. I think, Amy mentioned that we're an abolitionist organization at the beginning of this call. And a big part of the reason of that is because we have pushed for changes for so long in conditions. For example, in Colorado, our facility, we've been fighting it since off and on since 2007. And the first part of that campaign was really focused on conditions because the immigrant community here was worried people would be transferred somewhere else. But after 10 years of pushing for better conditions, it became really apparent that the way the system is structured is for dehumanization, shame, harm, and social control. And so our members switched to a shutdown campaign very explicitly last year, even knowing that their loved ones could be transferred somewhere far away. Every bed we can take offline is one less bed they have to fill. And I think the big thing to understand about conditions is the contracts don't have any punishment clauses. So if you don't meet the standards, you don't get fined, your contract doesn't end. Most of these facilities are for profit, and there's no profit motive to treat people better. And once you understand that, the conditions make sense. Once you understand, like, oh, if they reduce the calories that they give people, then people buy more food from the corporate-run canteen. If you reduce people's access to visitation, they will pay for phone calls more. If you don't provide the medical care that they need, that's more profit to line your pockets. So I think that is one of the most important things to know about this system. And I think to prevent the expansion of this very harmful system, which, the Congress passed a huge detention expansion in 24, bipartisan, and then again, another expansion this past summer, it will probably require civil disobedience in many locations to prevent the construction and opening of these facilities. I don't see a way to stop this just with elected officials or only with, lawsuits. In this environment of this administration, it is going to take strategic, coordinated, interruptive, standing rock pipeline kind of organizing at the really local level to throw sand in the gears of these corporations, and we know that it works. We kept this facility expanding for 2 years. We lost in the end, but we didn't know what we were doing in 2007. It was like 5 people. And we slowed them down, you know, and that is what we have to do right now. We have to keep them from moving forward, I think.
Thank you. Thank you all for answering this question. And I'll just add one thing that when I started at AFSC many, many years ago, they just reopened the Elizabeth Detention Center, which this was in 1997. It had been shut down after there were basically people who were rebelling inside because of the conditions they were facing under the previous corporation that ran the facility. And so that facility is now still in existence, run by CoreCivic, as Araceli mentioned. It's a horrible, horrible place, and it's been it's going to have its 30th anniversary. There's a book coming out, I think in the spring, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it actually looks at the history of the Elizabeth Detention Center. It's going to be really, really good. So we'll keep folks informed about that. There's also a book called, let me just make sure I get the name right, Immigration Detention, Inc., that is a fairly recent publication that's also about the business of locking people up, and I can put a link to that in the chat as well. I also put in, we have our AFSC's Action Center for Corporate Accountability, which is always looking at profit making and how we can use our leverage to really stop that profit and to move all funding towards better in the world. There's just a couple more questions in the chat that I want to address. I saw one person ask specifically if AFSC provides like accompaniment, specific accompaniment support, and then somebody in New Jersey wants to volunteer. So I'm going to just say that the person, go ahead, Alex, do you look like you're coming off mute? Go for it.
Yeah, we do not, but there's an incredible organization that we partner with called First Friends of New York and New Jersey that do provide accompaniment. If you are local, please reach out to them. I'll put their link in the chat. And Rutgers University also has started an accompaniment program, but with their law students. Yeah, I'll put that in there, but they're really fantastic. A wonderful group. Yeah, and I encourage you.
Great. Thank you everybody for being so engaged and for all your questions and for staying present for so long. I think we're gonna kind of move to our closing and just share again so much gratitude for all of you. We're gonna put a couple of extra links in the chat for actions that you can take. And to say that we are going to be launching, it's not officially launched, but we're going to share with you the teaser website anyway. For the last many, many years, I can't remember how many, AFSC has hosted a week of action between December 10th, which is International Human Rights Day, and December 18th, which is International Migrants Day. So we have a week of action. In the past, we've called it Journey to Human Rights. This year, we're calling it the Stronger with Immigrants Week of Action to align with the campaign that we've got going. And we have a website where, and we'll share this out in the next, we do a follow-up email after these webinars. But if you and your community, your Quaker meeting, your church, your organization, you and your friends would like to organize an event within that time period that recognizes human rights. It could be a vigil, it could be a dinner, it could be canvassing, it could be anything you want it to be. There will be a place where you can actually register your event online so that people can see it. And so Mary has already put that in the chat. Thank you so much, Mary. We do things like there's a posada. Our Colorado office has organized that for many, many years. Our San Diego office does that. We'll do dinners, whatever, but it feels really good to be part of a community that's doing something nationwide all at the same time, and all in support of the rights and dignity of all people. I think there were a couple other actions that maybe we were also going to just throw into the chat. There's the action alert for governors. You can send a note to your governors. We have a stop deportation action alert and the no secret police action alert. I think we were going to put those in the chat. If you feel like clicking and signing on, we'd be really grateful. I think
Maybe just Amy, give a little plug for if people would like to donate to AFSC
yes,
too.
I was gonna do that. Thank you, Mary, but you already did it. If you would like to donate to AFSC, we will put the donate button in the chat as well. We are very grateful for all donations, for all support in all forms. Really makes a difference and allows us to continue doing this work. And sadly, we are going to have to be around for a while. There are many of us who would love to say we don't need AFSC anymore, but we do, and we're here, and we'll stay here for as long as we have to. Yeah, and I again just want to give extra thanks to the team of people who are doing this work behind the scenes. Summer, who is our amazing tech support for all of our meetings, always. Mary, who just popped in with that reminder about donating, who kind of holds us just together all the time on all the things. Syra, for like always keeping our time and reminding us to focus on all the good things and putting all the stuff in the chat and just being so good at recognizing all of the things that are happening, and that just makes all of the difference. And to Barbara and Lewis and Rick and all the people who get Jennifer and Piper and like all the people who just make this go smoothly, we're really super, super grateful. Thanks so much, everyone.